So in some shady, off-the-books Chimera lab, the scientists realize their top project, a crazy powerful S-rank Chimera known as Number 17, is basically on the fritz. Deciding he's useless now, they straight up trash him by sending him to the demon realm with a hunter squad making him their bodyguard, but telling him it's a one-way trip. Inside, it's a total monster apocalypse, but 17 just wrecks everything in his path. No sweat keeping the hunters safe. When the mission's over and the escape gate starts to close, the hunters ditch him just as planned. With no more orders and his body totally giving out, 17's old human memories start flooding back. Turns out he was an orphan they snatched, turning him into a chimera by pumping him full of over 500 monster cells. As he's fading out, his core goes boom in a massive explosion, and in a wild twist, Number 17 is reborn. Not as some monster, but as his original human self again. 17 is just completely floored, trying to process what the heck just happened. He realizes the monster cells inside him are still active, which means he's definitely not a normal human. He figures the lab is totally done with him, which is why they haven't bothered to come get him. On top of all the changes to his body, the experiment number branded on his wrist is just gone. 17's pretty sure he came back to life thanks to the power of the fire-type monsters living inside him. Apparently, as long as the core isn't completely destroyed, the creature can come back up to 3 times. But the thing is, they say phoenix cells don't fuse with human ones, which basically means his case is seriously special. 17 figures out that everything the lab did to keep him on a leash has totally disappeared. And since his life as Number 17 is over, he starts thinking about trying to live like a regular person. To kick off his new life, he needs a name and decides on Shion Dun. At first, Shion is all about getting revenge, but he scraps that idea since he doesn't even know who to go after. Still, he's confident he'll run into his targets eventually. Then Shion realizes he's completely bare, and figures getting clothes is probably step 1 to becoming human. He starts wandering around the demon realm, and pretty soon finds a river which he thinks will come in handy. He's looking around when he spots a dead bird monster that was taken out by some poison. Since he needed some leather, he figured the bird's hide would do the trick. He morphs his arm into a blade, and using the messed up skills he learned in the lab, he gets to work skinning the bird. The second he cuts into the bird's skin, a seriously nasty smell of poison fills the air. Still, Shion keeps going and eventually strips the dead bird completely bare. He's now got a big hide he can use for clothes, but he's bummed that it's super stiff and totally untreated. Just then, he remembers he actually knows how to tan the hide himself. He gets right to it and starts pounding on the hide until it gets really soft. Shion is pretty proud of his handiwork and doesn't waste any time cutting the hide into shape. While he's at it, the bird behind him suddenly twitches back to life. Using his fists, he tears the hide into the perfect shape for like a caveman-style cloth. He notices that not all of the poison is gone, but he's too lazy to deal with it and just decides to let it slide. Right then, he hears the bird chirp, and he turns around to see something that totally surprises him. The bird wasn't actually dead. Shion notices the bird seems to be moving in response to his words, which suggests it might actually understand him. What surprises Shion even more is that the bird is showing all the signs of being dead, but for some reason it's still alive. Not thinking too hard about it, he just figures it's one of those immortal-type monsters. He knows that his old self would have finished the bird off without a second thought. But since it's too weak to move, he doesn't see any reason to kill it. He kinda sees them as 2 lucky survivors. And he tells the bird to live its second life well, just like he's planning to. As he walks off, Shion says that maybe they'll meet again somewhere if fate has it in the cards. After he has his clothing situation sorted out, he figures the next thing on his list is to find a house. Shion starts looking around, and the first place he finds is a cave where he runs into a giant centipede-type monster. He's not interested in living in a dark place like that, so he bails. But before he leaves, he takes the monster's head off. After leaving the cave, he wanders until he gets to some snowy mountains. He runs into a few ice monsters, but he takes them out easily too. He decides the snowy mountains are a no-go, because finding food would be a huge pain. He keeps searching for the perfect home, and after a ton of looking, he finally finds a spot that feels right. There's a lake, lots of green plants, and a hill that circles the whole area. He checks out the lake and realizes it's full of fish he can eat. Everything he needs for a perfect home is right there. So without a second thought, Shion decides he's found the place to build his new house. Elsewhere, a mechanical-type chimera has just found itself in the demon realm. Since Shion has decided to build his house at this location, he finds a good spot and turns his arm into long, sharp blades. With just one swing, he chops down trees and lines them up. When he lays the foundation logs on the ground, he notices it's all bumpy, so he fixes it by clearing the land until it's perfectly level. After he's done with that, he grabs the tree trunks and starts slamming them into the 4 corners to act as the posts for his house. So next up, he laid down some planks for the floor and walls, but get this, he couldn't find any nails, so he totally used slime from snail monsters instead. Apparently, that stuff is super solid, but he has no idea if it's actually waterproof. For the finishing touches, he used some cocoon silk from silkworm larvae. Shion was pretty stoked with what he built, but he could tell something was missing. He started thinking about what normal human houses have that his place was lacking. A garden maybe, or even a dog, but he had to scrap that last idea. I mean, you can't exactly raise a dog in the demon realm. So he decided a veggie garden was the move, but even that was a headache, cause he had to figure out what would actually grow in this place. Then it hit him there was a snowy mountain nearby where he could score a special plant called a mandraora. So Qian immediately bounced and headed straight for the mandraora's turf, which was up in the snowy mountains, where the demonic energy is like super concentrated. All that thick snow gave him a major flashback to when he was kidnapped as a kid and sent to that lab. And even though it was awful, he couldn't deny that being a chimera had some serious perks. Like he never had to worry about being cold or hungry, which was a huge plus. Before long, he found the mandraora patch. Turns out these things are crazy sensitive to stress, kind of like those dramatic sunfish monsters. They can literally die from the smallest change in their environment. Since he was planning on moving the mandraora, he figured grabbing the younger, more chill ones was the smartest play. The first thing he did was start to clear away the roots. And he also remembered to cover his ears since they're famous for screaming their heads off when they're disturbed. He yanked one of the mandraoras out, but to his surprise it was dead silent. He figured it was just a fluke, and pulled out another one, but it was the exact same thing. For real, the mandraoras were just taking a nice nap and could not have cared less. He pulled out a few more, but like none of them screamed the way he thought they would. Apparently they only freak out when humans try to grow them artificially. Since the human world has super low demon energy, they're basically stressed 24/7. And that's why they shriek like crazy. If you just rip them out, they scream and then just die. But since they were chilling in the demon realm, the mandraoras had zero reason to freak out. Still, Qian was super confused why the plants weren't even trying to run from him, because they totally should have been. Then it clicked, he actually has mandraora cells in his own body, so they probably saw him as part of the squad. He figured this was awesome because it made things way less stressful for him. Qian was already dreaming of all the cool things he could get. From growing the mandraoras like making tea or even just eating them as snacks. But if you just snatch their fruit, it turns poisonous, so Qian knew he had to get the plants to trust him first. Just then, he spotted some hunters in the area and decided to check them out since he was really curious what they were doing in the sketchy snowy mountains. Meanwhile, a couple of hunters were getting swarmed by a horde of B-rank rabbit-type monsters after their crew totally bailed on them. The two of them were barely hanging on thanks to their barrier, but even that was about to shatter. They were seriously regretting their life choice of becoming hunters out of all the jobs they could have picked. Just as they were about to get wrecked, something suddenly dropped out of nowhere and slammed into the ground right in front of them. It totally got their attention, and the rabbits too. When the dust from the impact started to clear, they were shocked to see a person walking towards them, and of course it was our boy Qian. He realized the monsters were just snow bunnies, and the second the rabbits sensed the vibe coming off his body, they freaked out and all just vanished into thin air. The hunters couldn't believe that B-rank monsters just dipped at the sight of Qian. The two of them thanked Qian for the save, and they introduced themselves. He did the same, but the hunters were legit confused, because they'd never heard such a weird name before. Qian then asked the hunters what they were even doing in the demon realm, because he could totally tell they were low rank. The hunters confessed they did it for the money. Apparently there was a quest to capture a chimera alive, and the reward money was seriously tempting. The moment they mentioned chimera, Qian got super defensive thinking they were talking about him. But then, the hunters said the chimera escaped from a lab and was supposed to be some kind of mechanical type. Since he wasn't a robot chimera, he figured he was in the clear. His new plan was to get his hands on a gate crystal, and then head back to his new crib. Qian then asked the two where all their gear was, because he was pretty sure they'd have gate crystals. The hunters then revealed that the dudes who ditched them had taken all their stuff with them. The hunters then asked Qian if he was planning on going back to the human world soon because they were pretty much at their limit. Basically, humans can't hang out in the demon realm for long because the demonic energy will eventually take them out. But that stuff didn't even faze Qian anymore. The hunters started begging Qian to save them, but right then, Qian spotted the traitors. He immediately launched into the air and bolted toward where the other hunters were, while the two guys left behind basically had a heart attack because their savior just vanished right before their eyes. Meanwhile, the hunters have this chimera totally cornered and are about to wreck it. But the second they close in, the chimera just flips out and goes full-on battle mode, like it's not scared at all. A second later, Qian pops up where he last sensed the chimera, but all he finds is some blood and leftover hunter gear. And on top of that, he spots a kid's footprint mixed in with beast tracks, which totally means the chimera was shapeshifting during the fight. I mean, it's made of liquid metal, so duh, it can change its form whenever it wants. But the stuff it's made from is super rare, which explains why it's so small, like no bigger than a little kid or a dog. Qian's actually kinda impressed that the chimera was able to throw down with 5 B-rank hunters who were gunning for it. On the flip side, the 2 hunters are completely gassed and get this one of them has a baby on the way. They're basically expecting to get wiped, when Qian just strolls onto the scene carrying their gear on his back. The hunters start begging him to save them, and just as he's about to ghost them, he remembers they're fresh out of gate crystals. One of the hunters whips out a fat stack of 2 million won in cash, telling Qian they'll buy the stones if he's got any. It's pretty obvious they're toast if they don't piece out of the demon realm like ASAP. Qian is shook by how much cash they're offering for a gate stone, even though he doesn't really need the money. Still, he decides to take it because it might come in handy if he ever visits the human world. Qian then opens a gate for them, and the hunter bows, promising him he's never going to forget this massive favor. The hunter grabs his totally wiped out buddy so they can leave, and that's when Xian casually mentions that gate stones used to go for around 200,000. But the hunter's like, bro, prices changed ages ago. The hunter asks Xian why he's so interested, and he admits he feels kind of bad for basically ripping them off. To get rid of the guilt, he decides to do something for them in return. He taps the exhausted hunter on the shoulder and starts pumping mana into his body, which totally freaks out the hunters. That technique is something that even A-rank hunters want no part of. That's because the manas could clash and get tangled, which would blow up their mana holes and lead to a dirt nap. The hunters figured Xian was gonna fail, and they were about to die, but to their total shock, he actually pulled it off and purified the demonic energy. The hunters hugged each other like their lives depended on it, because they thought they were goners. After he's done helping them out, Xian figures it's time for him to bounce. The two start thanking him like crazy, wondering just how OP his mana is for him to have so easily juiced up the exhausted hunter. After the hunters are gone, he heads back to his place pretty pleased that his little trip went so well. He notices the mandragoras are already awake and he figures it's time to plant them. He finds a spot and plants the mandragoras, but they seem super unhappy. Xian wonders what their deal is and tries feeding them some mana to make them feel better. Just as he thought, their mood totally flipped, leaving Xian relieved. Meanwhile, the mechanical chimera is hiding in a bush behind him, and even though he can feel its energy, Xian decides not to make a move until it's ready to connect with him. Xian steps into his house and dumps out all the loot he got from the hunters, including the cash. In the pile is a portable burner, 8 gate stones, some spare clothes, and sleeping bags. Xian is glad because it's all stuff he needed, and lucky for him there's ramen in the bag, too. He remembers the last time he had ramen was way back at the orphanage. Since he's starving, he decides to make some for himself following the instructions on the pack. He grabs a pot and steps outside to get some water. But then a fish comes flying out of the water trying to attack him. Since he needs other ingredients for the ramen anyway, he just smacks it till it's out cold and stuffs the fish into the pot. To add more flavor, he finds some wild eggs, herbs to use as onions and throws everything in. At the same time, the mechanical chimera is watching its stomach grumbling like crazy. Xian turned on the gas and started cooking, but the awful smell from the ramen almost choked out the mandragoras. Even though the food obviously smells disgusting, the mechanical chimera is super interested in it. Since it really wants some, it comes up with a brilliant idea and transforms into a dog. It learned that humans love dogs, plus they have a real soft spot for injured animals. It limps toward Xian like a dog, but Xian can easily tell it's the mechanical chimera. Xian checks out the scene and realizes the mechanical chimera is still just a kid and learning the ropes. He wonders how the chimera even managed to bust out of a lab and find its way to the demon realm. Since the chimera seems down to hang with him, he offers it the gross-looking ramen he made. The two of them sit together and eat, and it reminds Xian of when he and the other orphans used to love eating ramen. After they're done with their beautiful meal, Xian tells the chimera it can leave since he needs to clean up. The dog turns to go, but as it's walking away, Xian reminds it that it was limping on its left foot a minute ago. The chimera is shocked realizing it's been caught, but it just switches its injured foot and keeps on walking. A little later, he decides to give laundry a shot, pulling out some of the clothes he got from the hunters. I mean, he has to since he can't just wear leather forever, unless he wants to be a total caveman. He tosses the shirt on a rock, figuring he'll just wing it based on what he already knows about washing clothes. He grabs a small stick and gently taps the shirt with it. But plot twist, even that light tap completely shatters the rock in the shirt. Xian is hit with a major wave of frustration, realizing this is the downside of being crazy strong. But hey, at least he's got one more shirt to practice on. Then he clocks that the mechanical chimera is still following him around. It hasn't made a move or anything, but it's definitely shape-shifting into whatever it needs to blend in, watching his every single move. From everything he's observed, Xian guesses the mechanical chimera is basically a kid, probably not even 5 years old. On top of that, it talks in this super awkward robotic way, which Xian thinks is probably fine. It's just a weird side effect for young chimeras who had knowledge basically downloaded into their heads. After a serious struggle, he finally gets the hang of doing laundry, and it turns out great. The only problem he realizes after all that work that the shirt is way too tiny for him. But instead of just trashing it, he decides to hang it on the line as a trophy for his efforts. With that done, he figures checking on the mandragoras is next up on his to-do list. The second he leaves the shirt on the line, the mechanical chimera swoops in, grabs it, and puts it on, just totally copying what it's seen humans do. Then the mechanical chimera declares that the shirt is officially hers. And to really pull off the look, it transforms into a young girl with beautiful long hair. Over by the garden, Xian notices the mandragoras are acting super weird, which is totally not how they should be. The leaves are already wilting and the roots look all dried up. Xian is super confused because he knows he pulled every single weed when he was setting up the field for them. So Xian checks it out more carefully and discovers there are parasites underground that have been giving the mandragoras a really hard time. He's kicking himself for not checking more thoroughly since he almost killed the plants. He decides he needs to build a proper garden for them, one about as big as his house. Right as he's about to start, the chimera shows up and says hello. Xian is stunned to see the chimera has turned into a girl and is actually trying to have a conversation. The girl asks Xian if the building behind him is his house, and Xian says yeah. Then she asks if he's a native here, and the second Xian hears that, he decides to mess with her a little. Xian says he is, and asks the chimera what tribe she's from. The question totally stuns her. But after thinking for a sec, she says she's from across the waterfall, which is like really far from here. She adds that it's so far away it's pretty much impossible for Chian to find. Chian decides to troll her a little more, asking if she's from the coconut tribe that lives by the waterfall. The Chimera immediately agrees, saying yeah, she's from the coconut tribe. Then Chian brings up the shirt she's wearing, pointing out that it's clearly his. The girl argues that in her tribe, anything you find is automatically yours. Chian decides to drop it, telling the girl she can keep it. Then Chian asks her what she's doing in this area, and she explains that she got booted from her tribe, which is why she has a favor to ask. The girl tells Chian she wants to live in his house, and she's totally pleading with him to agree. Chian plays dumb, asking what she means by living there, and she says it's because the place seems safe. Chian figures she just needs a place to crash and says okay, but he makes it clear that she has to pull her own weight. The girl totally agrees and suggests Chian give her a job to do. So Chian tells her he needs her to till the field since he wants to build a new home for the Mandroras. The girl doesn't hesitate, grabbing the stick from him and promising that she's really good at using her strength. She instantly starts tearing up the ground, which completely shocks Chian, because the girl isn't even trying to hide how powerful she is. Chian figures out she's not used to being a normal kid, so she has no clue how they're supposed to act. And then out of nowhere, he asks her what her name is. The girl is stunned because she doesn't have one, but she decides to come up with a name for herself, based on the flowers she saw earlier. She declares that her name is Kimnari. Chian pretty much figures out how she came up with that name, but he decides not to question it. A few moments later, she's done with the garden, and Chian gets the stone fence set up. Chian then moves the Mandrioras into their new home, and they are totally loving the new setup. Chian notices that Kimnari is crying and asks her what's wrong. She tells him that seeing the Mandrioras reminds her of her friends, which leaves Chian stunned because he can't believe the lab would let their creations socialize. All of a sudden, Chian senses a weird energy in the air and figures out that some monsters are fighting. Nari then tells Chian that she saw a little chick monster earlier, and from the feel of things, it's the one getting attacked. Chian couldn't care less. But he notices Nari looks super uncomfortable, which totally throws him off. Surprisingly, Nari wants to go save the monster, but she's having a hard time saying it because of her whole situation. The programming she's stuck with. It's like she has zero free will, but Xian's a real one and decides to step in. He tells Nari the little chick actually has a shot if they help it out. And hearing that totally flips a switch for Nari, who just bolts toward the chick monster, getting jumped by a bunch of other lame monsters. Nari furiously starts wailing on them, screaming at them to back off the little guy. So quick flashback to Nari's past, turns out she got picked on by the other lab kids, just because she was a total goody two-shoes who always did exactly what she was told. They literally ganged up and beat her senseless, which is exactly why she can't stand bullies. Fired up by that old rage, she just unleashes on all those monsters, no holding back. Meanwhile, Chian's taking care of the Mandrioras when Nari comes back holding the little white chick. But the poor thing is totally knocked out from the beatdown. Xian's about to give her instructions when it hits him that chick looks super familiar. Nari just loses it, crying her eyes out and begging Xian to save the bird, so of course Xian offers to help. He places his hand on the chick and starts pumping some mana into it, since it doesn't look like there are any fatal wounds. As he's doing his thing, it clicks for Xian. This is that immortal-type monster he took the hide from. He's totally confused, though, about why it shrunk down to this tiny size. But he just guesses its healing powers work differently than his. After he's juiced it up with mana, Nari asks if the little monster is in any real danger, but Xian mentions that it's pretty much just starving. It was having a hard time finding food being so small, and Xian tells her the monster will bounce back on its own now that he's given it a mana boost. Surprisingly, Nari gets all worried about leaving the chick alone. She starts begging Xian, asking if she can keep it and raise it. She swears she'll train it right and feed it and everything. Xian tries to warn Nari that the chick monster could get huge when it grows up. But Nari's not fazed, promising she'll only feed it a little bit. Xian really doesn't have the energy to argue with her again, so he just gives in and lets her take care of it. Besides, Xian figures it could be useful as a guard for the yard. A second later, the bird monster wakes up, and the instant it cracks open its eyes, it totally recognizes Xian. While Nari's all hyped that the little guy's awake, the monster is giving some serious side-eye to the buff dude in front of it. The monster is also super grossed out that it's being manhandled by some little girl, wondering how a kid even ended up in the demon realm. And while Nari just hears a cute goo sound, Xian can hear the bird monster screaming bloody murder in its head. He's totally shook when he realizes he can actually understand what the bird is saying. Nari is just stoked to have a pet and immediately starts giving it a bath. And she's already picked out a name for it. The most creative thing she could think of was Goo, since it makes that goo sound like a pigeon. The monster bird is just like, are you for real? They're seriously giving it the worst name ever. Goo scrambles to its feet and starts screeching at Nari, which she totally misinterprets as it crying for more water. She doesn't hesitate, before dousing it with even more water. This just makes things a million times worse for Goo. It collapses on the table, mentally begging Nari to stop the water torture. Since Nari has no clue what Goo is saying, Xian steps in and tells Nari to chill with the water. Nari then decides Goo must be hungry and runs off to find some food. A little later, Xian realizes he's going to need some kind of storage shed, so he lays out some logs to chop them down to size. But the wood just crumbles the second he touches it, which leaves Xian totally baffled. He's sure he followed all the steps he knows. But Gu pipes up, letting him know he's doing it all wrong. Gu explains that different trees have different densities, and the one Xian's messing with is basically just softwood. Xian is shocked to hear that wood has different levels of hardness, and Gu literally can't believe how clueless this guy is. So Xian asks Gu which color means it's the strongest wood, and Gu tells him that the red-colored wood is the toughest. Then it suddenly hits the little monster. Wait, Xian can actually understand him. To be sure, it tries to form a telepathic link to get inside Xian's mind. But Xian slams that door shut the second he feels it. Gu asks how he can understand him, and Xian just says it feels like human words are just popping into his brain. Xian, though, thinks it's way weirder that a monster can understand human language. Gu is kinda cagey about how it's possible, but Xian puts two and two together and realizes it's one of those super rare intelligent type monsters that have a low chance of spawning. Xian's heard the stories, but this is the first time he's actually seen one up close. Then Xian brings up the fact that he and the monster have definitely met before. And Gu doesn't even try to deny it. Actually, Gu's been waiting to see him again because Xian literally saved its life by peeling off its nasty poisoned hide. Gu had already promised itself that if they ever met again, it would help Xian out at least one time. It all clicks for Xian. The immortality core survived because he got rid of the poison that was wrecking Gu's body. So since Gu is offering to help, Xian asks if it's down to help him right now, and it says yes. Gu tells Xian to follow it, saying it'll lead him to where the red trees are. They're just about to head out when Nari comes tearing back with the hunter right on her heels. The hunter's throwing around fire attacks that are totally freaking Nari out. You can tell the hunter is not happy about having to go after a little kid. But for real, his whole life and career are on the chopping block if he doesn't get this mechanical chimera back. The hunter finally tracks down Nari, who's just a sobbing mess on the ground. He launches a massive flame attack to try and take Nari down, but Qian just blocks it. Qian looks totally ticked off with Gu just chilling on his shoulder as they make their grand entrance. Gu tells Qian he'll spill the tea about the trees after they save Nari. Qian sees Nari is completely frozen because she's terrified of fire, so he decides to put the flames out first. Gu is fuming that the hunter is picking on a kid, and the hunter is just as mad that some random dude is getting in the way of his mission. Qian basically tells the guy to zip it because he talks way too much. This just makes the hunter even more furious, and he unleashes more fire, but Qian shuts him down with like zero effort. He just blasts the hill behind him, causing the whole thing to come crashing down on the hunter. The hunter realizes what's happening way too late, and next thing he knows he's buried under a ton of sand. Qian then goes to check on Nari, telling her there's nothing to be scared of anymore. He promises her that whenever she's afraid of something, all she has to do is take it down. Qian then decides to check on the hunter. He grabs his head to pull him out of the sand, but plot twist, the guy's hair comes right off. Qian is shocked when he sees it, but he is about to be totally mind-blown when he sees the hunter's super bald head. The whole crew is shook because the hunter looks so young but is already bald, which is obviously why he was hiding his insecurity with a wig. Nari completely forgets she was crying her eyes out a minute ago, and just starts cracking up at Mr. Baldy. Qian, on the other hand, is trying to size up the situation and comparing the hunter's power to Nari's. Qian's thinking there's no way she should be losing to a guy like him. Since he needs to know what's really going on, he decides to use telepathy to peek into her memories. He senses that Nari is still terrified of the evil scientist who experimented on her, and Qian pats her on the head for being such a tough girl. Qian gets that the trauma won't just vanish overnight, but it'll get better with time. Qian is then left wondering what to do with Mr. Baldy, and with a huge grin, Nari says she's got an idea. A little while later, the hunter wakes up to find himself literally hanging from a waterfall. They tied a giant rope to a huge stone, and he's just dangling there. The hunter sees this and starts regretting every decision he's ever made. Nari is off in the distance, dying of laughter, while Qian tries to tell her it's not cool to make fun of how someone looks. Qian then grabs a pot and fills it with water from the river, claiming it's for ramen. Nari gets super excited when she hears this, because she swears Qian's fish ramen is the best in the entire world. Qian teases her, asking if the coconut tribe even eats fish ramen, and she enthusiastically yells yes. The hunter, meanwhile, is trying to process his situation, and from Qian's whole vibe, he figures he's at least a high rank. However, he can't shake the feeling that Qian might be even stronger, because you hear stories about crazy powerful hunters who operate in the shadows, while Qian is getting water for the ramen. Nari is just going off catching fish left and right. Qian has to tell her they only need one fish, so she can set the others free. Nari happily agrees, and Qian tells her to toss the fish in the pot. The hunter is watching in absolute horror, unable to believe they're about to use that ridiculous amount of water to cook just 3 packs of ramen. The hunter can't stand to watch this culinary crime happen, and he screams at them to let him go so he can cook the ramen properly. Qian's like, fine, and cuts him down so he can cook even though it's just ramen. The hunter can feel the intense vibe coming from the two of them, knowing he's dead meat if he messes this up. With sweat dripping down his face, he decides to stick with the classic ramen recipe he knows by heart. He figures he'll just have to trust his gut on how much water is needed. Since he's cooking 3 packs of ramen, he adds the sauce packets and noodles to the boiling water. He calculates that he needs a little over 4 minutes to get it perfect. To nail the exact timing, he starts counting his own heartbeat. The moment he hits 200 beats, he busts out all his expert noodle techniques. The hunter is desperately wishing he had some kimchi, but since he's stuck in the demon realm, that's a no-go. Still, he gave it his all, and he's ready for whatever happens next. Once he's done, he calls the group over to see if they're ready. They all stare at the noodles, and Nari is the first to point out that it looks totally different from the ramen Xian makes. Xian and the group decide to try it. And the second they take a spoonful, they're sent to a whole other dimension because the ramen is so freaking good. Nari jumps up from the table telling Qian how ridiculously delicious it is. Even Gu is completely blown away, as he asks if humans get to eat food this amazing every single day. Qian admits he's actually surprised too, but suggests they finish the ramen first. A little bit later, they've scraped the pot clean and deep down they're all devastated that it's gone. The hunter nervously asks them if they like the ramen, and the first thing Qian asks him is, "So what is it you really want?" The hunter's like totally confused by the question, and Qian's all, "Dude, this ramen is way too good to be free." So Qian tells him to just spit it out and ask for whatever he wants as long as he can actually do it. And he promises he'll make it happen. The hunter Namkis is so stoked to hear that he literally faceplants and begs Qian to teach him how to be a total beast just like him. Qian is completely shook by this, and asks Kishio why he'd ask him for training when he's not his master or anything. Kishio just confesses that Qian is like the most powerful hunter he's ever seen. Plus, he can tell Qian has totally made himself at home in the demon realm. I mean, he even built a house there. Kishio starts listing all the reasons he'd be awesome to have around, and the biggest one, he can cook. For real. He's even down to be Qian's personal delivery guy for stuff from the human world. Kishio is seriously desperate to level up with Qian's help so he can get that A-rank promotion. Then Qian asks him straight up if he went after Nari for the bounty money. The hunter is shocked that the robot girl actually has a name, and Qian just leans in and whispers for him to play along and say Nari's from the coconut tribe. Kishio claims he was after Nari for like super personal reasons he can't really talk about, but he swears to Qian it had nothing to do with a bounty. Then Kishio adds that all he cares about is passing that hunter promotion test. After hearing him basically beg, Qian agrees to help him out, especially since the guy made him some killer food. To kick off the training, he suggests they start with a quick sparring match. Kishio is totally hyped for this, but Nari jumps in saying she wants to be the one to fight him. Qian's like, "Are you for real right now?" And she hits him back with his own words. "You said you're supposed to knock out scary things." She's all fired up and wants a shot at putting out Kishio's flames for good. So Qian points to this black rock and asks Kishio if he thinks he can break it. It's called black iron stone, and supposedly this stuff is like multiple times harder than a diamond. Kishio is completely floored by the request, and while he's busy trying to come up with excuses, Nari just straight up shatters it and demands they get on with the fight already. Alright, so flashback time to Kishio's backstory. He was a naturally awakened hunter, basically a total prodigy. He got his powers when he was only 8, which is crazy early since most people don't awaken until they're like 10 or older. And because he was a major grinder, he leveled up super fast, hitting B rank plus before he was even 20. Everything was going perfectly for him, until he realized his hair was falling out. Big yikes. In his early 20s, the top of his head got seriously thin, and by his mid-20s, he had that classic M-shaped receding hairline. Kishio started hitting up pharmacies desperate for a fix. But the pharmacist basically told him to forget about a transplant because it would all just fall out again anyway. He used to be this super talented, good-looking dude, but the whole hair situation just killed his vibe. Because of it, his progress as a hunter totally stalled out, until one day he saw this research show hosted by a doctor, Han Mengdu from the Hanbit Research Institute. This doc was going on about how he accidentally dumped this super rare liquid metal all over his head, and get this, his hair grew back like crazy. Turns out the guy is almost 90 years old but has a full head of hair. This totally grabbed Kishio's attention, and he finally dragged himself off the couch where he'd been rotting away. When Mengdu gets asked about what was left of the liquid metal, he says he's going to use it to build a robot life form and go for some big prize. Kishio completely loses it. When he realizes the doctor has zero plans to make a cure for baldness, which is like the actual best use for it. A few days later, Kishio sees on the news that the robot life form from the Hanbit Research Institute escaped into the demon realm. And since there are basically no rules in the demon realm, Kishio snapped out of his funk and decided to go find that robot so he could have it all for himself. His master plan was to pour all that liquid metal on his head, but now he's in the demon realm getting his butt kicked by Nari. Kishio can't even believe Nari is so much stronger than him. He literally can't land a single punch. Qian is not impressed and totally calls him out on it. But Kishio's no quitter, and he promises his new master that he's gonna do better. A little later, Qian finishes building the storage cabinet thanks to that tip from Gu about the redwood. Even Gu is impressed with what Qian made and tells him the cabinet is solid and will definitely last forever. Meanwhile, while everyone's doing their own thing, Kishio is training like a maniac. And even though Nari is totally wrecking him, he's not even embarrassed. Instead, he feels kind of free. He figures it's because he finally took off his wig. Gu is pretty impressed with Kishio's firebending skills, but he's also bummed that the guy can't even take down a kid. Qian has to remind Gu that Nari isn't just some random kid, so it actually makes sense. And since Kishio just refuses to give up, he demands another round with Nari. This time he attacks her with a legit flame blade. He actually manages to hit her, but then she just turns her body into liquid, which completely blows Kisho's mind. He's just standing there totally stunned, which leaves him wide open. Nari snaps right back to her normal form and kicks him so hard he goes flying into a hill, leaving a legit crack in the wall. Nari's all confident like, I'm not scared of fire anymore and it's all cause of Xion. Meanwhile, Kisyok's just laying there totally humiliated, wondering if he's like peaked as a B rank and has like 0 skills left to show off. But you gotta give it to Kisyok, the dude does not quit. So he hops right back up looking totally hyped. He's like, round 2 Nari, but then suddenly boom, nosebleed. Xion chimes in asking how many days he's been hanging out in the demon realm. Kisyok's answer is that he's been there for 9 whole days. Xion's basically like, dude, you need to bounce back to the human world, cause at your rank you're gonna get wrecked if you stay. Kisyok knows he's right, even though he totally wants to stick around. Then Xion drops a bomb telling him he's got the potential to be an A-rank hunter, and that he just needs to keep grinding. Kisyok is completely shook by this, but honestly he's lost all faith in himself after failing the A-rank exam for 6 years straight. Apparently the word on the street is, if you can't pass in 3 years, you're basically a lost cause. So failing 6 times, that's like unheard of. But Xion's not having it. He tells him he can totally do it because his mana hole isn't even fully developed yet. Xion makes sure to tell Kisyok to make sure he cleanses all that demonic energy as soon as he gets back. Kisyok thanks Xion for the solid advice and promises he's gonna give it his all. A moment later, as Kisyok's getting ready to leave, he asks Xion if he needs anything else cause he can see the ramen supply is officially gone. Xion's cool with just more ramen and Nari chimes in wishing him a safe trip back. Kisyok tells Nari to keep up the training, promising he's gonna win their next showdown. Right before he leaves, Kisyok asks Xion if he's seen his wig anywhere, but Xion's like, nope, I hasn't seen it. With nothing left to say, he finally dips. But as soon as he's gone, Gu brings up the sketchy possibility of Kisyok betraying them. So Xion asks Gu what his take is on what Kisyok might do since Gu can read minds too. Xion can tell that Kisyok is dead serious about his glow-up journey to get stronger. Plus, Xion actually digs how sincere the guy is. Right then, Nari asks Xion if he can actually understand Gu, and he's like, yep. Xion then pulls Nari inside to show off this cabinet he just finished. He's super proud of his handiwork. But Nari's quick to point out that the house is kinda gloomy. Xion totally agrees, and figures a window would fix that right up. Using his powers, he just carves out some window holes, and Nari is absolutely stoked. Nari loves it when things are bright, so Xion brings up needing some lights for nighttime so it's not pitch black. He mentions this thing called a glowstone that literally lights up in the dark and says a few of those would totally brighten the place up. Gu's kinda skeptical, asking Xion if he even knows where to find them, and he's like, yeah, I do. Turns out, you can find them in the volcanic region, which is known by hunters as one of the most dangerous spots ever. Then Gu drops that the place is actually his hometown. But when he says it, he looks super bummed out. Xion's confused by this, cause he thought Gu would be happy about going home. I mean, who wouldn't be? Nari asks Xion what Gu's deal is, and Xion just says that Gu's upset about something. Since Gu is obviously stressed about the volcanic region, Xion says he'll just go solo. He tells the other two they can just chill at the house. But Nari's not having it. She says she's going with Xion cause she's over her fear of fire now. Xion's pretty impressed, like wow, she got over that fear super fast. Then he turns to Gu and asks if he wants to tag along. He kinda hesitates but then says yeah, he'll go. Because he's got some unfinished business to take care of back home. Now that the whole squad's on board, Xion announces he's gonna craft some special gear for Gu to use in the volcanic region. Meanwhile, over at the Mandragora plantation, they're just messing around with Kisyok's wig that they totally jacked. So get this, the volcanic region is a place most people avoid cause the ash literally shreds your skin. The demonic energy is so thick you could die from one breath and there's toxic gas everywhere. It's pretty much why the place is a total mystery to the human world. But the second our crew gets there, Nari is literally playing with fire. Gu's like, that girl is acting so weird, chalking it up to her being a mechanical life form. However, he's way more curious about what Xion's deal is. Xion just casually says he's a chimera hunter, which totally throws Gu off since he knows they aren't usually in human form. Xion explains he wasn't always like this, but his form changed after he regenerated. Then he asks Gu if he's actually cool hanging with them since you know he's a monster and might feel weird around a hunter. Gu tells Xion not to even worry about it. He's just happy to have someone to talk to for a change. While these two are chatting, Nari pops up to complain that she can't hear Gu the way Xion can. So Xion fills Nari in telling her that Gu was just asking where he came from. Nari immediately jumps in claiming she's a native, but Gu totally knows that's not the case. They keep trekking through this super hot boiling landscape, and Xion says they should be able to find the luminous stones near the lava sprouts. A little later they make it to the top and can see the stones right ahead. But then they spot a male fire toad in the distance and it looks like it's crying. And get this, there's a dead female fire toad right in front of him, that's why he's so upset. Turns out, the mama toad was in the middle of moving their eggs when she died. Gu explains that only the females can carry the eggs, so with her gone, it's pretty much a death sentence for all of them. On top of that, the crater is way too hot for the eggs to survive. And just as you'd expect, Nari feels awful for the toad, so Xion decides to step up. He literally just jumps right toward the toad. The guys are all yelling at him to stay back because the toad is clearly agitated. And yep, just as predicted, the toad blasts Xion with its fire breath, but he blocks it with just one finger. Before the toad even knows what's happening, Xion is right there and taps its head with a single finger. Turns out Xion hit the toad with a paralytic poison when he tapped it. This makes the toad totally unable to move, but Xion knows it'll wake up soon, since he only used a tiny bit of poison. Plus, fire toads are crazy resistant to poison anyway. From the top, Nari yells down to Xion asking if he's okay. Xion yells back that he's fine because he actually has fire toad cells in his own body. Xion says they might not be able to help the dead toad, but he's pretty sure they can still save the one that's alive. Xion then gathers all the eggs and puts them on the male toad's back, tying them on super securely so they won't fall off. When the male toad comes to, he's totally shocked to find he's now carrying the eggs. He goes over to his dead partner to say his goodbyes before taking a massive leap away. Right before his final jump out of the area, the fire toad looks back and stares at Nari for a sec, and she just knows it was trying to thank them. Since they're done with the toad drama, Xion tells Nari to come on down so they can grab the stones. Nari gets all hyped and starts grabbing stones from the volcanic pit, but Xion warns her to be careful, or she'll crush her foot if she drops one. Nari just giggles and jokes that the stone is nothing compared to her strength. Gu, on the other hand, is having a major struggle carrying the stones and blames it on his tiny body. Xion tells him to go take care of his business while he handles the stones. Xion thinks Gu even brought gifts for his friends, but Gu snaps back saying, monsters don't have friends. In fact, he's not even planning to see them, he just wants to drop off the gifts and bounce. Xion is impressed that Gu actually misses his family, which makes him a really smart monster. Gu, though, is trying to fool himself, saying he doesn't miss them, but he does regret not saying goodbye when he left. Xion then asks Gu why he left his pack. Gu then says that when he got super intelligent, there were some good things and some bad things. Apparently, Gu thinks he never would have felt the emptiness that's currently wrecking him if he hadn't learned their language. Gu felt superior and totally alone, because he couldn't really connect with anyone, which is why he left. His pack doesn't even know he's gone, but he doesn't hold it against them since they don't really have that sense of family. While they're getting the stones, Nari suddenly finds an egg, and it's obviously a monster egg, but she has no clue what kind. But then a small crack appears on the egg when Gu almost falls and drops the stone he was carrying. Xion is worried the baby inside might have a problem, because it needs to break out of the egg on its own to grow up strong and healthy. Nari is concerned and suggests they take the egg with them so it doesn't get cooked. Gu is totally against this since they have no idea what kind of monster will hatch out of it. Xion, on the other hand, is already thinking of the perfect solution. He knows a place that would be perfect for a nest, and besides that, he's a little curious about what's actually inside the egg. After thinking it over, Xion decides they're taking the egg home with them. Gu is still adamant that they should leave the egg because he's never seen an egg that looks like that. Xion then hits him with a guilt trip, asking why he dropped the stone and cracked the egg in the first place. Gu accepts the blame, but reminds Xion that Nari could get hurt because of the stupid decision he's making. Xion then tells Gu they have nothing to worry about as long as he's there. Gu thinks about what he said and finally agrees to let them take the egg home. Since they're all on board with taking the egg back, Xion suggests they get back to mining stones. A little while later, the group gets home and sees that Kisio is back. Xion is surprised the dude came back so early. Kisio then offers to carry Xion's bags for him, and since he's claiming to be so strong, Xion hands him the bag. Kisio takes the bag, but he drops it instantly like it was Thor's hammer. Just then, Xion notices that Kisio's face is covered in bruises, and he asks him what happened. Back at the volcano, it turns out Gu's gift for his family was the ramen packs he left for them. Xion figures out that Kisio must have gotten beaten up somewhere, but this is a huge shock since Kisio doesn't seem like the type of guy to get bullied. Kisio tries to save face by saying Nari beats him up all the time, but Xion can't believe the dude is actually proud of that. To avoid getting grilled by Xion, Kisio runs off saying he needs to make them some food. A few moments later, Nari finds Xion working on the stones. And he's like, "What you doing?" Xion says he's working on a lamp, cutting and shaping these stones. He tells Nari he's gonna hang the glowstones from the ceiling and promises her it's gonna look awesome. Nari is super impressed, calling Xion a total genius for how he explains everything so well. Plus, she thinks he's a really good dude, just like her dad. Xion totally jumps on that, asking if she means her dad from the coconut tribe. Nari just plays along and is like, "Yep." Then right after that, a massive fight kicks off between Gu and the Mandrioras, cause he's convinced they're on his turf. A little later, Kisuk finishes whipping up one of his special dishes, tofu pockets. He serves it up and tells everyone to go for it. Xian's totally eyeing the food, but he asks Kisuk what the heck happened to his face. Kisuk explains that he went to the Hunter Association to sign up for the promotion exam, but he bumped into some A-rank hunters. They started giving him a hard time for failing 7 years straight, and things totally escalated into a fight. But before he can even finish the story, the crew has already devoured all the food and are begging for seconds. Kisuk says the hunters told him to get lost, calling him a complete and total failure. They kept making fun of his hair, which is what made him snap and start throwing punches. So Qian asks if he's naturally bald or if he shaves his head. Turns out, his hair loss is some crazy medical mystery that nobody can figure out. Then Qian asks when the next promotion exam is, and Kisok says it's in 90 days. Since they're running out of time, Chian's like, alright, it's time for some special training. Kisok is super pumped for it and tells Chian he'll do literally anything he says. But then Chian totally surprises him by saying the first step is taking over dish duty from Nari. Kisok is still whining about the dishes when Chian tells him he also has to wash all the leftover glowstones to get the volcanic ash off them. Kisok is totally floored by this and has to remind Chian, didn't you say something about special training? Chian just tells him he can totally skip the training if he wants to be a total nobody for the rest of his life. Then Chian turns to Nari and says they should go fishing to help with digestion. Nari is so down for that, and Kisok, meanwhile, starts to realize Chian must have a real reason for making him wash dishes. So instead of complaining, he gets right to it because he's a guy who hustled hard to get to B class. Kisok immediately starts hyping himself up, thinking about all his best qualities. Then he runs after Nari and Chian and catches up with them at the river. So while Nari and Chian are trying to catch fish, Kisok is stuck doing dishes, but he's having a seriously tough time with them. Apparently his kind of power makes it almost impossible for him to handle anything from the water. Chian is so not impressed with Kisok and tells him his mana actually has a purpose. He tells him to create a shield with it, but Kisok says he's always trying to, but it just never works. Hearing this, Chian grabs a glowstone and tells Kisok to hold it. Kisok is super confused why he's being told to hold a glowstone out of nowhere, but right then, the stone just falls right out of his hand. That's when it hits him. The stone is basically pure demonic energy, and he can't even get a good grip on it. Chian's like, yep, you're right, because some glowstones are packed with condensed demonic energy, and the energy from the demon realm is just raw wild power. Chian explains that he has to use his own refined mana to push it away before he can actually use his own powers, right? Chian tells Kisok that he's got a ton of mana. He's just really bad at controlling it. Then Chian taps a spot on his chest and asks him, can you feel a pathway opening up inside you? And just like Chian said, Kisok can feel mana rushing through him. Chian tells him to follow that new path he just opened up and to focus on his mana, while he tries to lift the glowstone. Kisok does exactly what he's told, and after a little bit of a struggle, he actually lifts the stone. Kisok is blown away that washing dishes and stones were all part of Chian's master plan. Since Kisok is totally into it now, Chian tells him to keep channeling his mana while he finishes up the dishes. Super hyped about the whole thing, Kisok promises Chian he's ready to do whatever it takes. Chian's also pretty impressed by his grit and determination, cause deep down he knows Kisok has totally got this. That night, Chian hangs the glowstone from the ceiling, and it actually makes a pretty sweet lamp. While everyone else is passed out, Gu is the only one awake with the egg cause he took a nap earlier, and now he's wide awake. All of a sudden, he spots Nari getting up like a total zombie and just walking straight out of the house. And get this, Nari just walks out of the house to wash her clothes cause they're dirty. Gu watches from a distance, totally wondering why this girl is doing laundry in the dead of night. He figures she probably had to, since she's a girl, and it's the only outfit she has. A second later, Nari walks out of the water, super happy that her laundry is all done and clean. She's totally celebrating her little victory. Then Chian steps out, pretending he's just getting some fresh air. When Nari asks what he's doing out there, he's like, oh, just on a walk with Gu. Then Chian asks her if she's out for a walk too. And she's like all nervous, oh yeah. So Chian tells her to hold up for a sec, and wraps this belt with her flower around her waist. Nari is totally vibing with the new look, thinking it makes her look so sick. Out of nowhere, this super annoying sound comes from the woods, totally freaking Nari out. But Chian's like, chill, it's just a grasshopper, so she doesn't have to worry. Then they start heading back home. And Chian asks Nari if she needs anything else, like clothes or shoes. But Nari's all, nah, I'm good. I love what you already gave me. A little later, Chian pops out of the demon realm in this sick outfit, but dude, he's got no shoes on. He's on a mission to go shopping for Nari, and everyone walking by is giving him major side-eye like he's totally lost his mind. See, Chian can't bring Nari out of the demon realm, cause she's got this tracker thing stuck in her, plus she's dealing with some serious trauma. Chian's just thinking, I can't believe I'm back in the human world just for some kids' clothes. So he's just standing there kinda lost and looking for a clothing store, when this scruffy-looking kid walks up and is like, yo, I can totally help you find a clothes shop for 10,000 won. The kid can tell Chian is definitely not from around here, so he promises he can get him to a store. Chian's cool with paying, but he tells the dude he doesn't have any small bills on him, and says he can only pay once he breaks a bigger bill. The kid's not impressed, like what kind of hunter doesn't have 10,000 won, and just figures Chian's a total noob who got ripped off. Still, he tells Chian to follow him anyway, since he looks like he's got cash to actually buy stuff. As they're walking down the street, the kid introduces himself as Bongu, and Chian spots all these cop cars parked everywhere, which makes him think the slum is safe now. Then Bongu's like, dude, I can tell you haven't been awakened for long, cause he came out of the gate with 0 gear. In Bongu's mind, he's pretty sure Chian just got jacked by some stronger guys, but he gives him a little pep talk telling him not to give up. Chian's thinking this kid is pretty smart for his age, but Bongu's quick to argue that he's not. A kid cause he's 17 years old. All of a sudden they see some sketchy-looking guys up ahead, and Bongu tells Chian to stay away from this district no matter what, saying it's the absolute most dangerous slum around. Apparently this gang, the Space Gang, used to just be in District 11, but now they've taken over all the way to District 13. Bangu says even the cops won't go there anymore, and that's when he drops the bomb that they are literally standing in District 12 right now. This totally freaks Qian out, and he starts wondering if the orphanage he used to live at in District 13 is even still standing. Meanwhile, over at a kid's clothing store, the owner is seriously regretting her life choices, like opening a kid's store in the middle of a slum. She's even thinking about changing businesses when Boom Qian walks in. After this hilarious back and forth between Bangu and the owner Park, he tells her Qian's here to buy some clothes. Park just flips and grabs Bangu's cheeks, yelling at him to stop dragging broke hunters into her shop, cause she's already got a ton of them who owe her money. Park's already sized Qian up and decided he's a lost cause because of his outfit. Turns out she's the one who told Bangu to bring in the down-on-their-luck hunters to the store in the first place, cause they remind her of her brother who passed away. Park's like, yeah, I said that, but says she's gonna go broke if she keeps this up. While those two are bickering like an old married couple, Qian's just browsing the clothes in the shop. Then he cuts in, tells them he actually wants to buy stuff, and whips out a 10 million won bill saying it's all the cash he's got. The second they see that cash, their whole vibe changes. Park suddenly turns into the world's best shop owner, while Bangu brings him a plate of snacks and a drink. Park immediately starts hyping up all the clothes she has in her store. Qian tells her he needs clothes for a girl who's around middle school age and for himself. Park is so hyped to hear that, and she dives right into her inventory to start pulling out all the cutest clothes she has. By the end of it all, Qian has basically bought out the entire store, and the owner is just wishing every day could be this awesome. After she bags everything up, she offers to have it all delivered, but Qian's like, nah, I got this, and says he can carry it all himself. Then Qian pulls out a 100,000 won bill for Bangu, and he tells him he needs one more favor. Once they're out of the store, Bangu is super quiet the whole time he's leading Qian to this inn he asked about. He tells him the place is safe, cause there's a police station right nearby, and the owner is a really good person. Hearing that, Qian heads inside and tells Bangu to wait for him out front. So Bangu's just standing there replaying everything that went down in the store. He's thinking something is super shady cause Qian gave him 100,000 won and even bought him clothes. He starts thinking Qian is one of those creepy dudes who tricks kids to snatch him, which leaves him wondering if he should just bolt. But then he thinks about it more and realizes, wait, maybe Qian is actually a good guy. Just then Qian comes back out and says that Bangu was totally right about the owner being nice. Then out of nowhere, he hands Bangu a key and says he can tell he's been living on the streets. Turns out Qian paid for a whole year's rent up front, so Bangu can live there now. And on top of that, he paid for his meals too. Qian tells Bangu to make sure he eats well. After getting all that sorted, he tells Bangu he's gotta go. Right as Qian's about to step through the gate back to the demon realm, Bangu just has to ask him what his angle is, cause they literally just met today. Bangu just can't wrap his head around the fact that Qian did all this nice stuff for him. Qian just tells him that doing all this kinda reminded him of his own past. He says that he was once just like Bangu, even if it was a super long time ago. And just like that, Qian dips into the demon realm. By the time he gets back, Nari is totally freaking out cause he just ghosted without a word. But then Qian's like, he was on a mission to get her some presents. He drops this huge bag on her and it's literally stuffed with amazing clothes. Nari is losing her mind over the new threads Qian got for her, and he's all like, go on, take him inside and have a fashion show. But plot twist, turns out Qian totally borrowed K-Sak's clothes to sneak into the human world and didn't even bring the guy back a souvenir. Savage. A little later, Xian's just chilling folding clothes, while Nari is trying on outfit after outfit. He's so happy that Nari is hyped about the stuff he got, plus she looks crazy cute in all of it. After a bunch of changes, she finds her absolute fave, the one with a little chick on it, and swears it's a dead ringer for Gu. Gu is so offended that he's being compared to some random chicken doodle on a shirt. So Qian's like, want to try folding the rest? And she's totally down for it. But Gu chimes in, pointing out that there's legit no space in the house for this mountain of clothes Qian brought home. Qian's like, I've been thinking about that. And his master plan is to just build an extension on the house for a walk-in closet and a built-in wardrobe. Casual. Gu's worried they're gonna have to go all lumberjack on the forest, but Qian's like, don't even trip, I know a guy. And boom, he summons Kishak out of thin air, telling him he's got some more special training lined up. Kishak is totally pumped to be picked, and he's like, I even cleaned your training uniform. And yeah, he means Qian's beat-up raggedy clothes. Kishak adds that the thing was drenched in poison, and since he had no clue, he almost bit the dust just from touching it. Kishak totally thinks Qian left the poison on there on purpose, as some next-level training to make him tougher. Little does Kishak know Qian was just too lazy to do his laundry. Then out of nowhere, Qian tells him he can wear it. Qian plays it so smooth, telling Kishak, it's the ultimate training uniform. He's like, suit up and go chop some wood. Then Gu, being extra, jumps in and says he'll even pick out the trees for him. Kishak instantly starts panicking cause he might actually die from wearing this thing, and Xian's just making it worse by sending him to chop trees. All of a sudden, Nari screams from inside the house, yelling that something's up with the egg. The whole crew rushes inside, and Xian figures it's about to hatch, which explains why it's shaking so hard. Kishak is freaking out, thinking some epic-level disaster monster is gonna pop out, but Nari's like, no way, it's gonna be a super cute one. They're bickering back and forth when the egg starts cracking. And the first thing they see are these crazy sharp claws. Everyone's holding their breath until the whole thing hatches, showing what's inside. But Nari and Kishak are just staring, totally confused, because this creature is like nothing they've ever seen. It's got a snake body, but with like bird feet. The little guy wastes zero time and just launches itself off the table right onto Kishak's face, and he literally almost has a heart attack. So a bit later, Kishak is out there chopping down trees just like his master ordered. Gu's perched on his head playing supervisor, and while Kishak's working, he's having a seriously rough time thanks to the poison seeping out of the outfit. Kishak can't even wrap his head around how Xian was just casually walking around in this death trap of a uniform. Meanwhile, Xian is just chilling after his fun time folding clothes. Nari comes over holding the little creature, telling Xian it seems like a total sweetheart and super well behaved. Xian thinks the creature is already loyal to Nari, because it can probably sense that she's the one who saved it. But the big question is still what to name it. Xian throws out the name Sasa, since it's part snake. Nari is still mulling it over with Xian when Sasa just hops down and bolts for the woods. Xian's just happy to see the two of them getting along so well, thinking it's a good sign for their little family. Xian mentions to Gu that he's never seen anything like Sasa, and Gu agrees, which probably means it's some super rare species. But Gu knows one thing for sure, that monster is definitely from the volcanic region. And because of that, they've got to keep a close watch on the Mandrioras. Apparently monsters from the volcanic zone think plant-type creatures are like a 5-star meal. Basically, they'll chow down on any plant in sight, because greenery is so hard to find back home. On top of that, they're obsessed with plants that are packed with strong demonic energy, which is why Gu is 100% sure the little monster is going to try to dig up the Mandrioras for a snack. And just like he called it, the creature has already found its way to the Mandriora patch, and a major stare-down is happening. Nari wants to jump in and stop them, but Xian's like, nah, let him be. He thinks since they're both monsters, they need to throw down at least once to figure things out. And since Sasa is still just a baby, Xian isn't too worried about it being a real threat to the plants. Right then, Sasa goes for the tiniest Mandriora, but the biggest one swoops in to block it. The Mandriora instantly pops into a defensive stance, then switches to a counterattack formation. And right on cue, the second Mandriora launches its attack. But get this, Sasa just blocks it with its tail, looking like it's totally smirking. But like the third one totally takes its chance and goes right after Sasa. So the Mandrioras just start wailing on Sasa, who starts bawling. Sasa ends up just bolting, and then Xian pipes up that So the Mandrioras totally smoked the first round of that fight. With the show over, Xian's like, alright, let's get back to it. 2 days later, Kisio finally finishes the house extension, and Kisak literally starts crying tears of joy as he ditches the outfit. He's all worried like, did I do a good job? But then Xian shows up gassing him up for doing even better than they thought. Nari's super impressed too, cause the whole place smells like flowers, which is all thanks to Gulu picking out some seriously aromatic wood. Xian's totally sure all the clothes they store in there are gonna smell awesome. When Kisuk finds out Xian named the new monster Sasa, he's like, nah, I've got a way better name. Xian just tells him to spill it. And my dude suggests Snake Chick, which is literally the lamest name anyone could ever think of. Nari throws out her own idea, but it's total trash too. Then Gu wants to get in on it. Xian decides to ask him for his real name since he said he had one. Gu reveals his name is Rocky Mountain Hoof, which is basically just describing himself. Xian lets out a massive sigh, cause he's stuck living with a bunch of goofs. Since nobody can come up with anything better, the crew just sticks with Sasa. Now that they're done with the house, Gu asks Xian what the next move is. Xian then drops the idea he had back in the human world, building a crazy strong fence around the house to keep monsters from just waltzing in. Especially when he's not around. Kyok just stares at the place thinking, for real, what monster in its right mind would even get close to this creepy house? But Xian's like an S-class monster might. Or maybe some rogue hunters, he adds. Since they're trying to keep everyone out, Gu says the fence has to be made of stuff with some serious demonic energy, and to get it they've gotta go to the coast. Apparently there's some yellowish quartz out there that's even tougher than blackstone. Xian's already picturing how sick the fence is gonna look if they stick some glowstones on it. While Nari and Gu are totally hyped for a beach trip, Kisak is having a full-on nightmare about it. He's scared out of his mind, but then plot twist he gets a nosebleed, which means he has to bounce back to the human world. Kisak couldn't be happier, talk about perfect timing. He immediately tells Xian he's gotta go grab some meds for his demonic energy. And Xian's cool with it. He just tells him to keep an eye on the Mandrioras in case they get back late. Then Kisak warns Xian to be careful cause the coastal region is a seriously bad news area. Especially for A-rank hunters and below. Basically the whole zone is run by 2 disaster-level monsters. This is brand new info for Xian, and Kyo explains that the rumors say they're chimera hunters, who broke out of a lab a super long time ago. Apparently they have bird heads, but their bodies are still totally human. Meanwhile, some other hunters are actually trying to fight those exact disaster-class monsters. They land a tracking shot, making the monsters turn and run. The hunters think it's scared and are all like, let's chase it down. But one of them says they should chill and wait for the monsters to get back to their base before they attack. The hunters are kind of shocked that after 60 years these things are still alive. They think the chimeras have gone completely feral, and they're not about to let these monsters mess up the legacy of creating chimera hunters in the first place. All of a sudden, they realize the monster isn't running away. It's coming straight at them. The team leader screams for his guys to throw up a barrier to block the incoming hit. But their barrier was basically useless. The monster smashed it in a single hit. That's when it finally hits them that they majorly misjudged how strong this thing is. The monster comes at them again, about to finish the job, when Nari pops up out of nowhere and just decks it, telling it to pick on someone its own size. The monster realizes that Nari's a chimera, and it jumps back to rethink its life choices. Nari tells Cheon the monster was bullying the hunters, but Cheon's pretty sure she's got it backward. Just then, the hunters get an alert that the mechanical chimera is close. That's when it dawns on Cheon that Nari still has a tracker inside her. Plus, Cheon seems to recognize the birdhead dude. Cheon yells at him, trying to remind him they were roommates, but he can't remember his tag number. While Cheon's having a chat with the birdhead, the hunters decide it's probably best to retreat back to the human world. But they're planning to come back for round 2 stronger. The second Cheon hears that, he knows they're just going to be a huge pain. Without even hesitating, he suggests that he and Birdhead just handle the situation themselves. And it turns out the bird guy really was his roommate, number 33. Number 33 also recognizes Cheon's scent, and figures out that he's number 17. Flashback to 66 years ago in a forest near the TDA lab. You see number 33 carrying a little girl on his back as they try to escape. Turns out the little girl's name was Gia, and number 33 was struggling big time to get them both to safety. As they're running through the woods, they suddenly bump into a little Xian, who tells number 33 that he heard his side effects were getting worse. Xian warned him that it would end badly for him if he didn't come back within 3 days because the detonation spell would totally go off, and it'd be game over for him. But Xian's like his sister Gia isn't on the chopping block just yet. Xian even suggests that number 33 just stay at the lab where he can score some suppressants for his side effects to live a little longer, even if it's only for a day. But number 33 just claps back, telling Xian he'll never get how they feel since he doesn't have any side effects like them. Number 33 gently puts his sister down and tells Qian all he gives a crap about is living free. And to get that, he's ready to throw down with Qian if he gets in his way. But then, Qian rips open a gate to the demon realm for him, which totally shocks number 33, because he never knew he had a gate stone. Basically, they know it's a coin toss if they step into the demon realm. It's either their human cells get wrecked by the demonic energy, or their monster cells absorb it and get a major power-up. Qian lets number 33 know that the demon realm is his best bet since he wants to live free until his time is up. The gist is the lab's detonation spell is useless once they cross over. Number 33 then asked Qian if there was any way to actually survive in the demon realm, and he told him he'd have to level up his mana like crazy to protect his human body and mind from all that demonic energy. Qian admits it might not be easy for him with his current stats, but he's pretty sure the future is totally unpredictable. Number 33 is like, I don't know why you're helping us, dude, but I'll take it. Right before stepping through, number 33 points out they've been roomies for 4 years, but still don't even know each other's names. And that's when number 33 finally reveals his name is Yubom. So flash forward to now, Qian puts the hunters under some kind of mind control to totally wipe their memories. And once he sees it worked like a charm, he just lets them go. Apparently, Qian has cells from an oblivion herb inside his body, which lets him do the whole hypnosis and memory loss thing. Yubom can't believe all the crazy stuff they must have injected into Qian's body, just because he never showed any side effects. Qian just tells the dude that a ton of stuff went down after he left. Nari then starts tugging on Qian's clothes, asking if he knows Yubom from somewhere. Since they're deep in their little native game, Qian tells Nari that Yubom is from the Sparrow tribe, which makes Yubom's jaw drop. Qian makes it even funnier by teasing Nari, asking if the Sparrow tribe and the Coconut tribe are allies. Nari's super quick to say that they're totally allies. While these two are talking, Yubom is just standing there looking completely clueless. Just then Nari bows her head to say sorry to Qian, saying she only attacked him because she thought he was a bad guy. Then Nari immediately starts whining about being hungry, and Qian asks Yubom if he's got any food at his house. Yubom is still so confused by this whole scene because he can't wrap his head around the fact that Qian is like raising a daughter. After a sec, Yubom takes the group to his house, which is literally built like a real bird's nest. Qian's super impressed, telling Yubom he did a sick job building his house. Yubom then brings out a plate of grilled clams he made with some demon butternut mixed in. Just looking at it, you can tell it's gonna be delicious. And the second Gu and Nari taste it, they're in actual food heaven. Even Qian has to admit the food is seriously good. Even the red moss that Yubom added was amazing. Yubom is super proud of his cooking, saying the red moss is his all-purpose secret seasoning. Yubom is about to tell them to slow down when he hears Nari screaming for more. Yubom almost has a heart attack on the spot because he's totally out of ingredients. Since Nari was so obsessed with the food, she offered to go catch more clams so Yubom could make it again. Yubom mentions it might be a little dangerous for her, but Nari just takes off promising to catch a ton so she can eat as much as she wants. While the kids are gone, the adults get a chance to talk about everything that happened after he left. Yubom is floored when he hears that Qian literally came back to life thanks to immortality cells inside him. Yubom then asks Qian if he's ever planning on going back to the lab. Qian admits that sometimes the thought crosses his mind, but he thinks his life is pretty good now, so he's not about to rush things. Qian then asks Yubom if he's planning on getting revenge too. Yubom points out that the spells in Qian's body might have vanished when he came back to life. But you can't say the same for them. For them, those detonation spells are still ticking away inside their bodies. Yubom's like 100% sure they'll explode the second they go back to the human world. Qian notices Yubom can control his wings, but asks him if his head ever went back to normal. Yubom says he can totally change it back, but he's intentionally keeping it this way. Apparently, his sister's face changed too, and if he looked normal, she'd definitely feel bad about it. And then Qian asks Yubom a super heavy question if he knows he only has 1 month left to live. Yubom isn't even surprised because he already knew. He admits things were tough when he first got to the demon realm, and he had to scrape together mana just to survive. After a while, he got his mana and the demonic energy to balance out, and because of that, things were peaceful for a long time. But then, something really bad happened not too long ago. Jia's mana hole got all tangled up and her demonic energy started going haywire. Yubom says he tried to force it open, but he ended up messing up his own mana hole in the process. So Yubom's like he's been handling it, but Jia's been passed out because she's been eating these fruits laced with a sleeping potion. Qian puts 2 and 2 together and realizes Jia's basically putting herself in a coma on purpose. She's trying to slow down the gnarly demonic energy that's totally wrecking her system. Then boom, it hits Qian. There's a potion you can make with Mandragora to fix a mana hole. Qian's pretty sure Yubom has like 0 clue about this, which is totally why he hasn't done it yet. Meanwhile, Jia is having a super rough time in the cave she's hiding in. Yubom is just completely shook when he finds out that he and Jia can actually live. Qian doesn't even blame Yubom for not knowing, because he only knows all this stuff from studying pharmacology in a lab since he was 15. Qian tells him all he needs to do is drink some refined water. It's gotta be from a mana hole that's been infused with the leftover roots of a mandragora. Qian always figured the leftovers were just trash, but they actually soak up demonic energy underground and then sprout. They turn into whole new things, even multiplying into more. It's basically its own little power source. Because of that, any refined water made from its leftover roots has some insane effects on regenerating mana holes. Qian never thought it would be useful to him, but he's super thankful now. Turns out he's actually growing his own mandragoras, so Qian tells Yubom he's gonna dip out and grab some for him. Yubom is totally shocked to hear Qian is willing to just waltz into the human realm for refined water. Qian's just like, hello, you can't go because of that curse on you, which is why I gotta be the one to go. But he tells Yubom he better keep an eye on Nari and Gu while he's gone, since the alchemist making the refined water will want to get paid. Qian asks Yubom if he has any cash, but he's like, nope. He does, however, have a ton of other loot he's collected from hunters. Qian grabs the items and tells Yubom that this stuff will be more than enough. Qian zips over to the human realm and meets up with Bongu, telling him he needs an alchemist like now. Thankfully, Bongu's become a legit guide, and tells Qian about this new alchemy branch that opened up in the slums. He offers to take Qian there since it's their best shot at finding what he's looking for. Qian notices Bongu is wearing sandbags on his arms and legs, and asks him what's up with that. Bongu says that he's building his stamina so he can get crazy strong just like Qian. Qian's pretty surprised to hear that, and Bongu tells him he already figured out Qian is a sick hunter because he basically just walks into the demon realm with nothing but the clothes on his back. A moment later, they show up at the alchemy shop, and Bongu tells Qian a new branch manager just got here, and word on the street is he's super skilled. On top of his skills, he's supposed to be a really good dude. Just then, they spot the manager in the distance getting a call from some loan shark. Bongu says the manager used to work at the Gold City branch for 20 years, but he got demoted and sent to the slums, and they even slashed his salary. Qian figures the guy must have done something seriously wrong. I mean, that's why he'd get demoted, obviously. But then Bongu explains that from what he heard, one of the guy's bosses was secretly stealing money from packages meant for the slums. But when the alchemist Kim reported it, they canned him for being a troublemaker, which is how he ended up in the slums. Just then, Kim spots Bongu and his whole sad face just lights up. Bongu tells Kim that Qian needs an alchemist. Qian uses his power to size the dude up, and he can tell he's definitely got skills. Once he's made the introduction, Bongu takes off saying he needs to go train. Inside the alchemy office, an attendant is complaining about their low profits right as Qian and the manager walk in. Qian gets straight to it, asking Kim if he can make refined water for mana holes using mandragora, since he's an A-rank alchemist. Qian adds that he needs about 2 liters of the stuff. Kim thinks Qian is talking crazy because he knows for a fact there are no mandragoras in the slums. On top of that, he's wondering how in the world Qian knows his rank. Kim is about to turn him down because he has no ingredients, when Qian pulls out these tiny mandragora roots, packed with dense demonic energy, totally shocking Kim. Kim's mind is blown because the roots look so fresh. It's like they were just picked. Qian then says he'll pay for Kim's work with some specialties from the coast. He hands Kim the bag, telling him to appraise everything inside. Kim looks in the bag and sees S-rank black pearls, which leaves him speechless because not even headquarters has ever seen one. And that's not all. There are also giant clams and red moss. Qian then asks Kim if it's enough to cover the cost, and he's like, yes. In fact, all the ingredients are worth more than enough to buy the whole building. The attendant tells Kim he needs to grab the appraisal equipment, since super valuable items need expensive gear to be appraised. After the attendant leaves the room, Qian sees a mandragora in a tube and asks Kim about it since he'd said they didn't have any. Kim explains that the mandragora he's looking at has been dead for about 10 years, which basically means all of its medicinal effects are long gone. Kim only kept it around because he was into researching mandragoras. Just then, Qian says that the mandragora is still alive, completely shocking the dude. Qian then feeds it some mana, and to Kim's total surprise, the mandragora actually reacts to it. Qian explains that the mandragora is just in a coma because it ran out of demonic energy. Kim just doesn't want to. Can't believe what's happening because he literally juiced up the mandragora with a ton of mana himself. Just then, Kim's total jerk boss Anne strolls in and immediately starts roasting Kim in his dump of an office. Kim is totally shocked to see the guy there asking him what he's even doing in the slums. And then Anne mentions he got a tip that something awesome just landed in the lab, which is why he dropped by. Kim is stunned to hear this, wondering if his assistant already snitched to Anne. Then Anne starts bragging about his crew, a set of twins who are ability users, before turning to Qian to introduce himself as Anji Zhang, the head honcho of the Alchemy Association. He wants Qian to bounce with him to Gold City and promises he'll be totally taken care of. Anne keeps going, saying he's ready to give Qian a sweet exclusive contract, something he'd never ever get from Kim. Qian then straight up asks Anne about the gnarly wart on his nose, because he wants to know if he's related to Bokdio, and Anne just laughs out loud when he hears this, revealing that Bokdio is his grandpa. Qian can totally see the trashy family resemblance between them, because Bokdio was the creep in charge of the experiments that turned him into a chimera. He was a garbage scientist who couldn't have cared less about the kids, and he even had the same nasty wart on his nose as his grandson. The second Qian confirms they're two peas in a toxic pod. Qian blasts Anne with so much power that it literally drops him to his knees. Qian says how bummed he is that Anne is just a carbon copy of his trash grandpa, another greedy, power-hungry psycho. Anne is genuinely clueless, so Qian decides he's got one simple question that'll decide whether he walks away or gets wrecked. With a legit death glare, Qian asks Anne if the TDA laboratory is still a thing. Anne plays dumb, saying he has no idea what Qian's talking about, making Qian ask him again if he's seriously never heard of the Chimera Research Lab where Bokdio worked as a top researcher. Kim is hiding behind something, totally shook to hear that Bokdio, the guy who won the Peace Prize, was actually working at some shady illegal lab. Still on the floor, Anne starts yelling at Qian, telling him not to drag his grandfather's name through the mud because he worked hard mentoring the next generation at the university. Even after retiring, he gave away his entire fortune to the families of the gate victims, which is how he snagged the Peace Prize. Qian figures out that Bokdio decided to play saint in public after taking out so many people behind the scenes. Qian expected him to still be around since he wasn't an awakened one, but he kicked the bucket so fast. Qian then asks if it was a side effect of falling from a window, and this totally shocks Anne because that whole incident was kept on the down low and he's super curious about it. Qian just casually mentions he was the one who yeeted Bokdio out the window because he was turning kidnapped kids into chimeras. The guy threatened to toss them into a gate, but Qian beat him to the punch and sent the dude flying out the window. Qian then tells Anne he's going to give him just one chance. He wants Anne to go back and dig into the TDA research lab. Qian lets Anne know that he'll come find him when he's good and ready. Qian can't believe he ran into Bokdio's kid in the slums of all places. He remembers how they put him through that messed up experiment when he was 9 years old, and the monster parts started popping up on his body in his 20s. From that point on, it's all a blur. He figures out that he was basically just running on autopilot and instincts like a total zombie. It suddenly hits him that the lab's name has probably changed since it's been so long. A little while later, Kim comes back from his lab with the refined water he needed. Qian is super impressed by how quick he was, especially for an A-rank alchemist. Kim explains that the ingredients were so primo that the whole process was a total breeze. Just then, Qian asks Kim if he'd be down to sign an exclusive contract with him and promises to hook him up with the rest of the ingredients. Kim is totally floored when he hears Qian offering him an exclusive contract on top of the super expensive ingredients he already has. He literally starts crying happy tears when he hears this, which leaves Qian confused, thinking he must have offered the guy a bad deal. Kim then explains that he grew up in the slums and when he was little, his parents took out this insane private loan. He swore he'd pay it back, but no matter how hard he worked, he was always stuck in the same rut. What Qian just did for him is like the greatest kindness he's ever known, leaving him wondering how he could ever possibly repay it. Qian can't believe the dude is already stressing about paying him back. Qian tells Kim all he wants is for them to keep being a team. Qian knows there are things he's going to need Kim's help with down the road. Since his work here is done, he figures it's time to bounce. But he really hopes things haven't gone totally sideways while he was gone. Just like he was afraid if Jia had gone completely wild and was wailing on Yubom. Even while getting pummeled, Yubom is dead set on keeping his promise to protect the kids. Yubom finally decides to throw down with his sister and he zips toward her at lightning speed. He slams her to the ground, but then this weird barrier suddenly pops up all around her. Yubom has no clue what's going on until he finally realizes Chan was the one who trapped her in that jellyfish thing to hold her back. Everyone is so relieved that Chan showed up, and Yubom asks him if he scored the medicine. Chan tells him he's got the goods. He tells him to give Jia one bottle and to take the other one for himself. After drinking the medicine, Jia finally chills out, and she wakes up later that night to see Nari sleeping right beside her. Gia shot up totally thinking she was dreaming until she spotted Yubom and Xian just chilling by the fire. But when Xian turned to look at Gia, she literally almost passed out and just started screaming, asking Xian who he even was. Gia's scream totally woke up Nari, who immediately started being super friendly with her. Then Yubom tells Gia to check out her mana hole, and when she does, she realizes that it's like completely healed. On top of that, her face is back to normal. Gia is totally freaking out and asks Yubom where he even found these guys. Yubom is super surprised that she doesn't recognize Qian, especially since she was the one crying her eyes out wanting to see him. Yubom gets that it's been a while, so that's probably why. But then after taking a real good look, it finally clicks for Gia that's number 17. She sprints over to her brother to make sure, like, is that for real number 17? And he just says yes. But instead of being all nice, Xian just kills the vibe by asking if there's any more red moss. Yubom says they're all out, but Gia isn't even shocked because Xian was always the least emotional guy ever. Anyway, she takes off her mask to thank Xian for everything he's done so far. All of a sudden, Nari spots something sparkling in the ocean, and Gia explains that it's a sea fairy. She says they're basically just seahorses that live way deep in the ocean. But Gia and Yubom gave them the sea fairy nickname because they look just like fairies when you play with them. Apparently, the seahorses only pop up at night and dip once the sun rises. Gia spills that if you follow the sea fairies, you can find this awesome yellow glowing quartz. That's when it hits Xian that he completely spaced on his main mission. So Xian asks when the sun is gonna rise, and Gia says it'll be up super soon. Since that's the case, Xian decides he's gotta go for a swim. Meanwhile, on the outside, a bunch of scientists have tracked the mechanical chimera's last known location to the coast. The scientists are in the middle of a meeting when Anne calls up Mengdu, asking him if he knows anything about the TDA laboratory. Mengdu's like he's never heard of it, and Anne tells him it was some sketchy illegal lab that was running a long time ago. Mengdu tries telling Anne that the Hanbit research lab doesn't do that kind of shady stuff. Mengdu even mentions how Bokdio always told him to be a straight-up, honest researcher. After the call, Mengdu starts wondering how Anne even found out about the illegal lab. A second later, one of his assistants comes in and tells him they successfully created a liquid metal mandragora. Mengdu is so hyped about his new creation because mandragoras are crazy good when it comes to tracking family. He's glad he kept a little liquid metal on hand. He's totally sure that the metal mandragora will go right after Nari and find her super fast. He then orders them to triple the bounty on Nari and get all the A-class hunters involved. He's desperate to find Nari, no matter what, because he sees her as his life's masterpiece. Back in the demon realm, Yubom is standing by the sea thinking about the chat he had with Xian about the quartz. Apparently, Xian had told him he'd wanted to use it for his house, which totally blew Yubom's mind. Yubom realizes that Xian has actually been having a good time in the demon realm. Xian then asks Yubom if he'd ever want to visit the human world, and Yubom says he's not like dying to go, but he'd like to see how things have changed. Xian then told him that he could probably help him get rid of the curse on his body. Yubom is obviously curious about this, and Xian tells him about this alchemist saying Kim is seriously skilled. Xian says he wants to get Kim to research some spells, but he warns Yubom not to get his hopes up too high. Yubom starts crying and asks Xian why he's always helping them when they've never done a single thing for him. Xian admits that watching the siblings kinda impresses him, and makes him wonder if there's something more important than just surviving. Xian says that by helping Yubom and his sister, he thinks he's going to find his answer. Now standing in front of the clear sea, his sister suddenly shows up in the distance and throws a rope to him, telling him to pull it. Having no idea what it is, Yubom starts pulling, but he realizes it's actually super heavy. Yubom uses all his strength to yank on it, and he finally pulls the heavy thing out of the water. It turns out to be a massive amount of quartz. Yubom is absolutely floored when he sees it, cause he can't believe that Xian and his crew mined something so huge. Nari and Xian had a blast swimming around in the water while digging up the quartz. When they got to the Sea Fairy's palace, it was unbelievably beautiful, just like a yellow palace. Nari tells Xian she totally wants them to visit the palace again sometime, because of how many stones there are. Yubom asks Xian how he's planning on moving them to his house. Xian then says he's gonna have to start thinking about that. Suddenly, he sees a parrot-billed bird flying above them. He wonders why a bird that usually rolls in a flock is flying solo. Nari is amazed by the sight of the parrot, and says it looks really pretty, but Gia tells her she'll change her mind real quick once she gets closer. Gia says the birds are over 4 meters long and they're extremely vicious. They're so gnarly that Gia and Yubom don't even mess with them. But Yubom can already tell what crazy idea is going through Xian's head. Xian confirms it, saying he was basically looking for a truck and this bird just showed up. Back at the house, Kishuk is still grinding away to build up his mana, and he can finally see that his mana hole is seriously getting bigger. He's totally stoked with his progress and thinks his dream of becoming an A-rank hunter might actually be legit. He's totally zoning out about it when this metal mandragora just pops up behind him. He freaks when he sees the weird creature, but his problems are just getting started, cause right behind it are 3 super intimidating A-rank hunters. 2. The hunters totally recognize Kioch cause of his bald head and immediately start roasting him. Turns out they're the same jerks who bullied Kioch when he went to apply for the promotion exam. Kioch is in full-on panic mode when he suddenly notices that the 3 mandragoras in the garden are totally holding their ground, and they're doing it with some serious style. The hunters are hyped about the mandrioras, cause they're worth a ton of cash. One of them saunters over to a mandriora to try and trick it while Kyoch is already getting ready to go down fighting. To protect the mandrioras when the biggest one just yeets the hunter so hard that he goes flying. Then out of nowhere, Yubo and Jia show up at the house at the same time, leaving them to wonder what all the chaos at Xian's house is about. Apparently the two of them ditched Xian and got there first, because the parrot-billed bird was flying at a snail's pace all thanks to Xian, who was being way too rough with it while trying to tame it.